Saving People, Queering Things, the supernatural podcast where Bert and Ernie are gay.
Yep.
Today, we are pulling up to Season 5, Episode 3, Free to Be You and Me. I'm your host, August. My pronouns are they, them. And joining me today...
I'm Noah, pronouns he, him.
I'm Elayna, pronouns she, they.
And today we have a very special new guest with us. Pluto, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experiences with Supernatural and the Supernatural fandom?
Okay. Hi, I'm Pluto. My pronouns are she, they. I have essentially been in the Supernatural fandom since like 2012. I did take it was a 2-year break, I think, because like that's when I was entirely removed from the fandom. I did stop watching after like 3 episodes into season 12, but I was still kind of like, I still knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Because like I knew stuff that happened in season 13 that I like, because I just would read stuff on Tumblr. I always intended to catch up, and then I was like, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. But I came back. I'm a returnee from the night of November 5th, 2020, and it's been kind of weird to like reintegrate into the fandom as a veteran of the Destiel Wars of 2013 to 2017, and like see how like what is the same and like what is different, especially because like my first time in the fandom, it was primarily on Tumblr because like Supernatural Twitter didn't really exist at the time.
Yeah,
No.
that's very similar to me.
Now I'm primarily on Twitter and TikTok. TikTok has really got back into the fandom and kind of became known. There's air quotes there. So it's been really fun and interesting, and like it is also odd because it's the first time I'm someone who is known in the fandom. So that's been an interesting experience.
So now people can be like, wow, you heard about Pluto? It's messed up, right?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I heard we were having someone named Pluto on, and I knew I had to make that psych joke, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. That's It's funny because that is a bit like Elayna like recognized my Twitter handle. Like that is something that like happens, and sometimes it's positive, and other times it's like, oh, that bitch. Like,
do you want to talk? Do you want to share a tiny bit of what you're known for in the fandom, like right now?
Okay, well, I started on TikTok basically like just getting back into Destiel fanfic, and so
of course
I like, not to sound conceited, helped build the Destiel fanfic community on TikTok.
Oh no, you absolutely did. You were one of the TikTokers I followed pretty early on in my TikTok experience that was talking about Destiel fic. So you can take credit for that.
All right, I'm gonna take credit for that. So, and then that kind of like translated into me because I since my first like real fandom was Supernatural, like I've been engaging in queerbait discourse since I was in high school, and it's something that like didn't stop once I left the fandom, which I don't think people necessarily understand about me, is that like even though like I wasn't in the fandom for a time, like that doesn't mean I stopped engaging in this discourse, just took it like was with a different ship. But that's kind of where I am now, is like queerbait stuff. My name on Twitter is like queerbaitscholar, and like that's not like, it is a joke, but also it's not like
it's something you've done a lot of research into and that you understand really thoroughly.
Yeah,
and can talk
like,
about.
I'm very interested in it, and like I do know a lot about it. More so than the average person, to put that lightly. And so I do talk about that a lot, and I try to like, so something I've always kind of like prided myself in like my academic work is that I think I have a very like specific, like unique tone and like voice in my writing, where I think like it's approachable to people who aren't in those spheres. Like I've posted a couple of the essays I wrote for like my children's lit seminar, which was like basically ended up being like my undergraduate thesis. And like even people who had no fucking idea what I was talking about in like my Cinder essay said that like they understood it and thought it was entertaining. So like I try and do that with like queerbait stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Lately, I have been on a paratext kick because I'm really interested in them, and I think that they are a massive missing piece when it comes to queerbaiting discourse, and that discourse is something I take seriously because it is a form of queer activism.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain what paratext is, just for anyone listening who maybe doesn't know that term specifically?
Paratext refers to like, oh my god, I'm fucking blanking.
Meanings that are alluded to above or beyond the printed text. I didn't have to look it up earlier or anything. Don't worry about it.
So it's basically that like stuff that like prequels, sequels, video games, like interviews, panels at cons, like DVD commentary, like and gag reels, like stuff that is still like in reference to the main text but isn't the main text, and they're important to reading like text intertextually, which is where you pull from other things to like read a piece of media or read a text. So like
reading between the lines, kind of.
You're like within this episode, we're going to talk about the Thelma and Louise reference. That is reading this episode intertextually because that is an outside text. But like paratexts are like would be the season 5 gag reel and what we can glean from that to like look at the true context of certain moments and certain scenes and stuff. I'm really into gag reels as paratext. I think they're so interesting because of the season 5 gag reel and like the season 8 gag reel. Like it's very.
I have to remind myself sometimes that the gag reels aren't canon because I watch them so frequently that they feel as much canon as the show itself.
Well, and they do, and because they are paratext, they do have influence on our interpretation of canon, and that's really cool.
Yeah, because like they're a hybrid product of the marketing side and the production side. So I think there's something that like, yes, fans enjoy. They are meant for fan engagement, but like most paratexts or like all paratexts, they do still carry messaging about the main text. It may not be uniform messaging across the paratext, but like there's still messaging there. Like there's something that they are trying to convey. So like the season
15 one, don't even get me started.
I don't know if I've watched that.
Oh, we'll have to have a chat. We'll have to have a conversation.
No, I definitely have watched it, but I don't remember it very well because it's not one of the ones that I've like rewatched a million times, like season 8. Like,
to use a phrase I used earlier this week, when I watched it, it sent me into the fucking stratosphere. I was not well.
Okay.
Afterwards.
Yeah. And so like I really wish I could get into the season 8 one because I think it's a really good example, but I don't want to spoil anything.
We'll have you back when we get to season 8. We'll have you back and you can
have a whole episode about paratext at some point.
Okay.
That is a great idea.
I would enjoy that. As a person with a film degree and an LGBT studies minor, there is nothing I would enjoy more than a paratext episode.
I think they're so interesting, and like I'm glad I like now have this language because like I said before we started recording, like a lot of like queer baiting that happened with like Stucky and the MCU, like that was done paratextually. A lot of 911 queer baiting is done paratextually. So it's just I think they're very important in this discourse, but also something people don't look at because they just look at the text and that's it. And while that is valid, like you can look at the text of Supernatural and be like, yeah, like it is important to have like a full, like it's the queer baiting isn't just this one part of it. It's like the text and then it's like fan creator interactions and like other texts and like
it's gay on paper and in the abstract.
And so like you can listen to certain stories from like con panels and then like about certain scenes. Like there's a scene in season 9 that Jared Padalecki told a story about that was like, oh, okay, great. Which I hope people know which one I'm talking about with the room and the pictures.
Yep.
Yeah. You're like, okay, follow me on TikTok. You can learn more about paratext and queer baiting and Destiel fanfic.
Yes, we will put links to all of your social media in the episode description so people can easily find them. But yes, definitely do. Well, now that you've met all of your hosts for this episode, it is time to catch you up. If you have not watched Supernatural recently, here is what you've missed on the road so far. First up, Noah, you get to recap the show.
Woohoo!
Noah's going to give us a recap of where the show has been so far from the beginning to this episode. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go for it.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, Sam and Dean, brothers who have been hunting every sort of monster that's under the sun. And then in the past year, they've realized that angels are real. Demons have been fighting them this whole time, but angels are way scarier. And they save Dean from hell. He has to stop Sam from starting the apocalypse. He fails in that. And Cas, the angel that brought him back, is becoming more and more in love with him. Sam is following a deeper, darker road and splits away from Dean after they meet up with Ellen and Joe for the first time in fucking forever. Okay.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yes,
great.
No, we were talking about that when we recorded the other
very surface level stuff.
502 yesterday.
Yeah. Okay.
We
August
got a lot
texted
of
me
call-outs.
the day of and was like, "Hey, so we're recording 502 tonight, and it's a Rufus episode, and you really like Rufus. So if you wanna hop on, you can. Just a heads up. And I was busy, so I was like, no, hey, it's okay, no sweat. But I watched the episode that night and texted and was like, oh, okay, you said Rufus episode, not an Ellen and Joe episode. First of all,
I wasn't gonna give
subtle.
it away.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was a good reveal, but
Noah's been asking about Ellen and Joe like roughly every other episode since the last time we saw them.
Yeah.
Season 3, season 2, end of season 2. God,
That's rough.
yeah, but they're alive for now.
My reference for you today.
That's right.
Now, Pluto is going to recap this week's episode. Let me know when you're ready.
I've been like practicing this in my head. I still feel like I'm gonna mess it up. Okay, I think okay. I think I'm good.
Okay.
You can do this. We believe in you.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, go.
In this episode, Sam and Dean are on separate vacations. Sam trying to live a normal life, but we all know how that goes. Dean and Cas take a case and catch themselves a Teenage Mutant Ninja Angel. That's what you missed on Glee.
Amazing.
I love you for that so much.
That was beautiful.
Phenomenal.
It's now time for us to pick some music to accompany us on our journey. Here's what we have for this week's episode and mixtape. Noah, do you want to start?
I would love to. I went with a song called Hallucinogenics by Matt Mason. It's fantastic, kind of haunting song about where he's been and how he has carried on like the wayward son, and through he has come undone. So it kind of really feels about how Dean is feeling about being alone right now.
That song is actually on my Destiel playlist.
Fucking love it. It's such a good song, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will be looking it up. It's not one I'm familiar with, so I will be looking it up later.
It's really good.
Probably going to end up on my Destiel playlist.
As it should. The direct call outs to Carry On Wayward Son is like the driving point. It's like, okay,
Right there.
that really
I
establishes
listened
it.
to it. I was like, "That okay? That's going on there."
Yeah, it's already a great song, and then it does that. Yeah.
What's funny though, Noah, is as you were saying that, I almost decided to change my mind and do a joke submission for this one and just have it be On My Own from Les Mis, but you know, it's
Also a strong song.
also a strong song, but
Can't go
not,
wrong.
not the one I'm gonna go with.
What is your for real pick then, Elayna, for this week?
So my for real pick, because since it's a Destiel heavy episode, you know I had to go to the Heartstopper soundtrack to choose something because I'm me.
You're just
And
working your way
some-
through that soundtrack on the mixtape.
Yeah, anytime there's Destiel heavy stuff, I'm like, okay, where's Heartstopper? Where is it? So this episode, I'm gonna go with Trips by Reem, which is a really fun song. And like particularly there's a verse where it's like, we'll be okay even when the sun goes down, wild and free, you and me, nobody around, let's escape the ordinary, leave our worries behind, make good use of our time. Like it's very much, I think, where Dean and Cas are kind of at in that, like, well, last night on Earth. And just the way that Dean has that, like, one of my favorite moments of the whole episode is Dean's laugh. And when he, like, lets himself be like, I haven't laughed like this in years. Like that to me, even though there's like so many surrounding sad reasons for that, he gets a moment of joy and he doesn't get those often. And so I'm like, you know what? I'll take it when we can get it. So Trips by Reem is my suggestion.
I love that. Pluto.
So mine is a bit like on the nose / heavy handed.
We love
Good.
that.
But
Good.
it is Free to Be You and Me by Marlo Thomas, sung by the New Seekers, which is the where the episode title came from, which I did a lot of research into.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about.
And by that I mean like I read a bunch of articles about it. I was like, this is fucking, oh my god.
Oh, I'm very
Learning about-
excited.
We love that.
So
Powerful.
I had a feeling that this episode title was a song reference. They usually are.
Wonderful. Well, we'll hear way more about that once we get into the full episode discussion.
What about you?
My choice this week is Bonnie and Clyde by Vance Joy. Also, for some of the same reasons, there's a Thelma and Louise reference. This is very like, this song is very much about like, lovers on the run kind of vibes. And I thought this song kind of suited that. So yeah, that's what I'm going with.
We love it.
Now that we have this mixtape, it is time for this week's hunt. And today we are exploring, as we said, season 5, episode 3, Free to Be You and Me. And if you're just joining us for season 5 for the first time, one of the things that we have been doing over the past few years is that we have been talking about each episode through a theme. This season, we are using the Supernatural Tarot deck. We are pulling cards for each week and kind of using those to help guide our discussion. So this week's card is the Two of Blades, and I'm going to read the card description, and then Elayna, our resident person who knows more about tarot, that is going to talk a little bit more about this card in general. But first I'll read from the supernatural specific card.
Yeah, is this a card where we can know what's on the card? Or
Yeah,
is
so
this
this card has 2 angel blades on it. The visual. We will try and post a picture of this card to our Twitter this week to show you all what this card looks like. But here's the description. The Two of Blades represents a tough decision to be made, particularly in regards to your beliefs, convictions, and moral compass. This card advises you to stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
Interesting in the context of an episode where Sam's being told a lot about his identity and who he, really is, and also is having to make kind of tough decisions about
everything.
What to do. Everything. This season's been rough for Sam so far.
Yeah.
We're
Just a
only on
little.
episode 3.
Well, last season was rough for Sam as well. So
Yeah, that's true.
Is there a season that hasn't been rough for either of them?
No.
No.
Yeah, no. Can't be said.
You're watching Supernatural. Elayna, do you have anything else just to add to this tarot card?
Of course. You know I do. I love that we're doing tarot this season. I'm such a dweeb for it. So this card, generally, it's so in the traditional tarot decks, this would be the Two of Swords. So very similar, Two of Blades, Two of Swords. The ye olden tarot deck depicts it as like a person who's like sitting on a beach and is holding 2 swords, and they're kind of like crossed over one another, and the person is blindfolded, which I think is pretty fun. Kind of relates to like how I think the two of them are like literally not seeing eye to eye at this point. They're just very separated. And the card means like the deck that I personally use, it's got like some keywords to describe it, and it uses like impasse, stillness, indecision. And so I think that it's kind of an interesting choice for this episode, because the two of them are like, they've reached this impasse where they're separated. They're like, we can't do this together right now. And what's kind of fun is, we've been talking even prior to recording today, we were talking a bit about like paratext and like looking at things from a larger perspective. And what's fun is that last week's episode was also part of the minor arcana, and it was a 2 card, which I think is really kind of cool that we had like the Two of Bones, and this week we have the Two of Blades. And so it's kind of interesting to have a back-to-back of like the 2 like in order, and both of them are kind of cards that are about like how separate the 2 of them are sort of seeing things.
Damn.
So
yeah, I like it. Can't believe my one wish for season 5 for the recap was just want the boys to be working together and get on good terms, and nope.
Welcome to season 5. No, it was really hard to listen to you be like, I just really want their relationship to be better than it was in season 4, and
just know
being like, well, you might have to wait for that a little bit.
Yeah, you might have to wait a minute.
Laughing so we don't cry.
Might not happen immediately. Well, that's a great segue into our main discussion of this episode. Does anyone have anywhere that they would like to start?
I would like to start with seeing Adrienne Palicki again, because love her. Queen shit right there. Having her pop up as Jess was fantastic. Did not.
I always forget she's in this one.
Noah, you're our first timer. Any like first timer thoughts? Some reveals in this episode.
Some reveals. Yeah. Sam being Lucifer's vessel, obviously.
Did you know that beforehand?
I think I did, because there were some, posts about brothers brought up together, destined to fight each other on separate sides of this holy war kind of thing. So I feel like I did know that, but I didn't remember it. So it was cool to see it, here in person. But I really like that they're keeping the white logo that they started doing at the finale of last season to show that shit's all crazy now. Like everything's different on a base level.
That's a cool
I really like that.
observation.
I'm a little confused about the timeline of this episode because
Yeah.
starts off with
It-
them in the bed and then it goes to a week earlier and then it doesn't really clarify when they catch up. So
I was on Beth and Jamie. I was on Driver Picks, the podcast, for their discussion of this episode, and we had the same conversation. And I don't remember what the conclusion we came to because we
I
were
feel
also
like
really confused about the timeline.
it's got to be so they could have Dean and Cas drive to Maine instead of teleporting there.
Yeah.
They needed a week to, I don't know.
I think it's like we've got the flash. I think it's like those are the same, like the two dream sequences with Sam are the same night, but you've got part of the conversation. Then they use the narrative device of like flashing back, show us everything that happened leading up to that, and then they finish the dream conversation, which is the same. Like those are
Really? You think so?
I think, well, when I talked to Jamie and Beth about it and we like looked at it and we analyzed it, that was the conclusion we came to that made the most sense.
Narratively speaking.
I agree, because it does not take a week to drive from Pennsylvania to Maine.
So where they started? They started in Pennsylvania?
They started
they do say
in
that.
Pennsylvania.
I was hoping it was California.
I noticed because
or
every time
something.
they're in Pennsylvania, I'm like, ah!
Me too. I also scream. I'm like,
Can you spell it out for the Canadian here? How long does it take to drive from Pennsylvania to Maine? I don't know.
So I don't have an exact time frame.
I
have an
roughly?
I bet you it's less time it takes to get out of
have a more
Texas.
exact one because I went there last year.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I took a bus there. So mind you, there were a couple stops along the way, but it was about a 12-hour bus ride.
Yeah. So like if you're
Okay.
driving, like
Yeah,
if
if
you're
you're
shooting,
driving, you could probably do it in like 10 hours or so.
Pennsylvania to Maine, like they're in the same region vaguely. So like
Eastern Seaboard, sort of.
yeah,
Eh.
northeast. Like they're close enough that it's like it would not take more than like 3 days.
That's if
Even
you're
if you
going slow.
stopped and looked at
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
sites along
Yeah, like
the
if
way.
you took a
And like
break,
did
it would take
overnights
you
and
2
stuff.
days.
Like
Cool.
I think it's a dumb decision to burn all of Sam's fake IDs. That's the
Yeah.
the worst fucking call. Like, you don't think those can be useful in any sort of way? Really? Okay.
He needs a clean break, Noah. He's like, I am rejecting this life again
Clearly, based
and
on
choosing the job least suited to me as a person.
I love when they just like set fires inside. They do that
Yeah.
twice this episode,
So
and I'm
cool.
like, like, what are you doing?
I mean, they didn't.
Smoke alarms.
My favorite is when they do it in the hospital.
Yeah. Like, how did no one like? And how long were they there? Like, it seemed like they were there.
Like, Dean's
all
like, oh, let me just
day.
adjust the blinds. No one will be able to smell this smoking oil on the floor.
But it's
And,
holy
like, no
fire.
nurses are gonna come in and check in on this patient. Like, what the fuck?
I think holy fire follows different rules than regular fire.
I've always sort
Yeah.
of assumed that that's the case, but still, the hospital, the choice to do it in the hospital in general, fire or no fire, is a
Like, what was their plan there?
Demons leave behind sulfur. It's only fair if the angels' weapons leave something behind too. So there should be some sort of smell or something.
Like, but the other thing is they would have had to put it out because
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been able to get to the house otherwise. So it's like, did you bring a mop? Like, or did you just like extinguish it and then leave the scorched oil on the floor?
It's
like,
a holy mop.
I have questions.
And like, my question is like, why did they set the fire before he showed up? Like, that
Well-
seems counterproductive. Well, I think they were planning on trapping him, so I guess that's why. But like,
Yeah,
but it seems like that would have maybe cued him
we're
in
like, let's set the trap while
Yeah.
he's
while
immobile.
his vessel is immobile, so that if he comes and enters his vessel, he is immediately trapped, which is like not a terrible plan.
It's a smart plan. It's just stupid.
they were planning on trapping him in the house.
Yeah. So why are
So,
they
like-
trying to trap him in the hospital?
Like, I guess to throw him off his rhythm. But like, what if he did show up in the hospital? Like, what was their plan then? He could nuke the place. Like, I don't.
Yep.
It was kind of odd that it's Dean and Cas pulled back up to the house, getting ready to go trap Raphael. Raphael thinking he's getting the drop on them. Dean even says, well, that's a waste of a day. I'm never getting back.
I think that was part of it because they knew he would like be in there, or like in case he was in there. Like, he's a fucking angel. He can hear shit.
Well, I think it was probably they set it as a just in case, and
Yeah.
like, they didn't know if they were actually going to need it, and so Dean's like, "Well, that was a waste of a day," and then they get back and it's like, "Whoop, okay, I guess
Like, no, it did work.
we're prepared."
Okay.
It's a reckless, stupid
Yeah, I'm
plan.
just trying to
Yeah,
defend him
No matter
because he's
which way you
ready.
slice it.
Yeah, I mean, like Dean and Cas came up with it together. Of course, it's gonna be fucking reckless.
Yeah,
he
they
doesn't
didn't
have an
have-
ounce of self-preservation.
But yet he still tries to go. It was his idea.
Yeah, oh my god, Cass's face. It's like, you little asshole. Oh,
He's like, I know, but shut up.
You didn't have to tell him that.
I thought we were on the same side here. How dare you?
That's one of their like one of my favorite like y'all are just husbands moments.
Yeah.
I did love when Cass showed up to Dean the first time, and
Oh yes.
Dean
That's
turns
iconic.
around
Yeah.
and they're 2 inches away, and he said,
Yeah.
Cass, we've talked about this. Personal space. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that conversation. That would
Yeah.
have been great.
Right? You and everyone else in the fandom.
At what context? In what context? In what?
Yeah.
How many times did this have to happen before Dean was
For
like,
Dean to,
Cass,
like,
We talked
Buddy.
about this.
we need to have we are sitting down and having a conversation about appropriate amount of space.
And then my favorite thing is like, okay, I love this scene. I want to talk about it a lot. But like it's so funny because like 2 seconds later he recloses the space.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
It feels very like I need to like token say I need my space.
it's a token protest.
Yeah.
Because like he's used
Yeah.
to like I think like that was something he would say because like Sam is there and he wants to like I don't know keep up appearances. But like
Yep.
okay, so this scene is like fucking insane to me because like first of all when
Yeah,
they start the
let's get into it.
conversation, Dean is like leaning on the counter, like literally holding a big knife at like crotch level, stroking it. And then he walks over to Cass, still hiding the knife, makes an explicitly queer reference to like, what, we're just Thelma and Louise, we're going to hold hands and sail up this cliff together, still holding the knife, putting him and Cass in place of these like queer characters, like that everyone knows are like
But
sapphic.
his face after Cass
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
react to it.
Yes, he has this
He's
like
like,
moment
"Oh,
of like
shit."
disappointment, and then he like
Disappointment.
Of like, oh, of course he doesn't get this reference.
closes off, like distance himself physically as well as like emotionally because Cass didn't get this reference, and that like he was flirting, and then he puts the knife away, and then they have this serious conversation, and I'm like, okay, phallic imagery, like.
You know, I never noticed the knife.
I didn't notice it until this watch through either, but I was like, hold on.
That's what he's cleaning in the sink. That would make
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
Well, no, he
Okay.
was cleaning his jacket, but then he started cleaning the
Oh.
knife,
Mm.
and then he put it
Yeah,
away
is that
after
what
like
kids are
Cass
calling
did
it these
not.
days?
After Cass didn't have the appropriate response to his flirting, he then
Yeah.
goes, "Okay, I'm going to change tack. We're going to try something else."
Yeah. And like I also love that scene because like even though Cass is very like abrasive in it. So something I love about this episode, like why it's one of my favorites, is I think it's like kind of these are the first like little sprinkles of humanity we start to see in Cass that like
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
that is just his like series long character development. And I think it starts here because like even though he's being kind of like very blunt and abrasive to Dean, like when he's like, I need your help because you're the only one who will help me leave.
Mhm.
Ugh.
It's a very human appeal.
Mhm.
He's being so human and he's being so like genuinely vulnerable with Dean in that moment, even though he is still so like stiff and like rigid. Like that's a moment of vulnerability. And I think that's the first kind of like hint of like him kind of adapting to humanity to where like that starts the journey of him becoming kind of this like hybrid creature of like he's an angel, but he's also like very human.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really fit in each like in either world, but he still always has a place with the Winchesters, like kind of like I
Mhm.
just and we see more hints of it like later on in the episode where I'm like, this is really sweet actually.
He's exploring this humanity part. Well, and I think it's really interesting that this is the appeal he gives to Dean in this episode, considering the last time he appealed to Dean, it was this, I'm hunted, I rebelled, I did all of it for you. And that is
and you
like
failed. Like
and like that was the appeal. Like that's the last time he appealed to Dean for help, was this sort of like this also highly vulnerable, highly human kind of appeal, but on the more anger and betrayal sort of side of like,
yeah.
I've given everything and you failed. This time it's like, I need your help because you are the only one who will help me. It's appealing to like the relationship he has with Dean.
And it's like highlighting the fact that like he chose Dean over everyone and like not, I guess, like weaponizing that against him, more so just like being like, I chose you, can you choose me? Like
Yeah.
Oh,
Being like, oh boy.
I'm
Oh
totally
boy.
normal about that sentence.
Especially after the Thelma and Louise reference. Especially after
Especially.
he's trying like at Cass, saying, I need your help because you're the only one who will help me. is sort of recognizing, is sort of acknowledging the particular bond that they have in his own way. You know,
Yeah.
Dean is using pop culture, as he always does, to say, you know, this is the way I see our relationship. And Cas is using his own stumbling sort of humanity to be like, I'm going to appeal to your sense of connection
what
with
I
me.
love is how, like, by the end of the episode, it's like you're talking about, you know, how we see some very human moments from Cas this episode, and it's one of the first times, is his line to Raphael, like, but today you're my bitch. That's
Oh
such
my
a Dean
God.
thing.
They do so much of that in this episode, taking each other's sort of phraseology.
Yeah. And like that one in particular, it's such a ridiculous thing to say, but I'm like, every time I watch it, I'm so proud of Cas, because I'm like, yes, you go, you have your little girl boss moment, and I just love it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is a segue into this theory I have that like Dean and Cas fucked at least twice in this episode and then just like never acknowledged it again. Like not even any like cosmic influence keeping them from like touching on it. They just like decided like we're not gonna talk about this again.
It's a whole last night on Earth thing. That's very a Dean sort of thing. And Cas is learning humanity from Dean. So if Dean's like, last night on Earth, whatever you do doesn't count. We just do it and then we don't talk about it. Cas is gonna be like, sure, that makes sense.
So in your theory, when did they hook up in this episode?
Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing.
Spirit, I need specifics.
Okay, so like this episode is the original fanfic gap.
Oh yes.
Because it cuts from them in the alley leaving the brothel to the morning when they're in the hospital, which begs the question, because Dean specifically says, like, you're not going to die a virgin, not on my watch. So it doesn't work out in the brothel. We don't see what happens between the leaving the brothel and getting to the hotel. They fucked in the backseat of baby.
Except for him saying that it's the most fun he's had in years. And then he's like, huh.
Like after that scene, it cuts right to them in the hospital.
Affection, like he puts his hand like right on Cas's like neck.
And that's another moment of like we see this like burgeoning humanity in Cas, because like Dean is laughing and he's experiencing this joy. And like this is the first episode we see Cas smile.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, because he has this little look.
A real
an actual smile. Like he like
a smile because I'm happy.
This cute little like look on his face, like he's happy because he made Dean happy. So it's like this proud little like, oh, I did something right moment. And so he doesn't really get why Dean is laughing and why Dean is experiencing this joy. All he knows is that he made Dean happy, and that makes him happy. And then they get into the car, and then we lose a few hours after Dean says, I'm not letting you die a virgin. And then they perform the ritual. So it's like they fucked in the backseat. And then after Cas's little, tonight you're my little bitch, they also fucked in baby after they drew up a bit, got away from there, and then fucked again because that was really sexy.
Oh,
yeah.
What he said.
What he said. Like Dean's going,
like,
okay.
So like blue screen, like, oh my God.
Like Cas took charge. Cas got the job done. He's like, I'm
into that.
I'm ready to go. I'm raring to go. And it's like also because in the scene where he's like, I'm not letting you die a virgin, it's like the context of that's like, I know two things for sure.
Okay.
One, Bert and Ernie are gay, and two, I'm not letting you die a virgin. So it's like,
I'm not letting you die a virgin.
If someone's mentioned they are a virgin, have never had sex, and then the very next thing you say is, oh yeah, these two iconic characters are gay, there's a connection there.
Like you're making a connection in your brain because like Cas is Bert and Dean is Ernie. So it's like,
okay, that was going to be my next question. Was Beth and Jamie and I had a whole debate about this on their episode. We had an entire debate about which one of them was which. So what did you just say? I like missed it.
Cas is Bert.
Cas is Bert and Dean is Ernie, and like okay.
Yeah, that was also my argument.
No, that
the
tracks.
rubber duckies, right? This is where the rubber duckies come in. Like my friend Katie makes rubber duckies, and like she texted me the one day, and this is like a couple months ago. She was like, I think this is like out of the blue. Also, like
as it should be.
I think it's funny that I use like matching tattoos to like trap people into like lifelong friendships with me, because like it's kind of awkward to not be friends with someone you have matching tattoos with anymore. She's like, so anyway, I think our matching tattoos need to be fictionally gay. Like that was her like thing, like we're getting matching tattoos because you are like, I'm trapping you. And I was like, oh, okay, fictionally gay, and it applies to both of us. I was like, oh, I immediately was like, we should get Bert and Ernie rubber ducky tattoos. I didn't tell her it was because of this episode.
You're like, Bert and Ernie are gay. That's also just,
She does know now, and she's like, that's actually funny.
it's funny because it's multiple levels. There's so many levels to why that's worse.
Yeah.
It's layered.
And it's also because like she doesn't watch this show. So like our matching tattoos are going to be in some way Destiel themed, and she doesn't fucking watch this show.
Which is also the most Destiel sort of fan experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very clown nosed of you, and I appreciate it.
She's like, okay, so who's getting what? Like, do we get the ones that like represent us, like on ourselves, or do we get the ones that represent the other? I was like, well, you're Bert and I and Ernie, because but I did say this in the in the conversation, so I think she did get that it was related, because I was like, you're Bert, I'm Ernie, like Cas is Bert and Dean is Ernie, because she's very Cas coded and I'm very Dean coded, which is why I know like that's the dynamic there.
Yeah.
And no one can change my mind.
Okay, I agree with you, and the reasons are similar. I think that Bert, we get this like sort of very kind of stoic kind of personality, takes a lot to like let loose, this very like held together, a little bit grumpy, doesn't fully understand human customs. Like that's
Kind of
very
stiff.
Bert personality. Stiff, yeah, that's Bert's
Kind of always
personality.
has like brown on his face, but like
Very
he still has
Cas.
these moments of like he's obviously very fond of Ernie,
Yes,
and he
very
cares for him
affectionate.
very deeply, and like they share like a very unique bond.
Yes.
They share their life.
A very profound
Yeah.
bond, one might say.
Yeah,
And Ernie is just a hot mess. Like you watch
Yeah.
us, Ernie's just a hot mess. Ernie is like loud and affectionate and messy and goofy, but also like kind
Pure
of
disaster
vulnerable
child.
and sensitive. And
yeah.
like it's yeah.
I just think it works for them really well.
Yeah.
Should we
Also,
clarify
I would-
that it's a Sesame Street reference in case there's
Yeah.
people out there that hadn't?
Don't
Bert and
know who
Ernie
Bert
are
and Ernie are.
characters from the children's program Sesame Street.
Iconic
That
children's
started
program.
in the, I forget,
60s, started in the 60s.
it started in the 60s as a way to help low income children kind of level the playing field when it comes to like education, because there was that massive gap. And so they were trying to be like, everyone deserves access to learning. Here's this free public program television show that like you don't even need cable to like watch. You just
Kids
need
on PBS.
access to a TV somewhere to help children learn, so it can like help diminish inequality in some way.
And Sesame Street has always been like educational, both academic and also social emotional learning. It's always been a representation of communities. It's set in a neighborhood that is meant to like mimic a lot of like New York sort of style neighborhoods. They constantly bring in guests to.
It's relatively diverse for children's programs.
Yeah.
It has always been a little
has
bit on the
been.
forefront of like that for children's programs. It was also started in the same similar era to like Mr. Rogers. They're contemporaries in terms of what they were trying to do and their era. I have in my house, I have this painting that I did like years ago that is
It's
Bert. That is like a rainbow. The background is a rainbow flag, and it's got Bert and Ernie on it.
well done, honestly.
It does
too.
come from this quote. It is designed based on this quote. It sits in front of where I record. I will take a picture of it and post it on our socials.
Fantastic.
I do like to
That is
show. I do like to
amazing.
just show people this in my house. People will just come in and will look at it and be like, nice. And they'll be
Nice.
like, Bert and Ernie are gay, and I'll be like, Bert and Ernie are gay.
The title of the episode is obviously Free to Be You and Me. And as I mentioned in the mixtape portion of the podcast, the title comes from a song titled Free to Be You and Me, which is from an album or a children's entertainment project that I think was formed at like most,
So again, Sesame Street, that's beautiful.
Written and created by Marlo Thomas and a bunch of her creative friends. Marlo Thomas is an actress and like social activist that was active in the like 60s and 70s. It was an album, and then it was also a TV special. So the album came out in 1972. The special was in 1974, if I am getting the years correct. I could be wrong. I am not great with years, despite the fact I was a history major. But so it focuses on kind of like post-60s gender neutrality, individuality, acceptance, tolerance, and to read directly from the wiki page you pulled up, comfort in one's identity.
Fucking kidding me.
Interesting.
It's very and in the song, the title song, there our lines, every boy in this land grows to be his own man, I feel is like in this land, every girl grows to be her own woman. Take my hand, come with me where the children are
Take my
free.
hand.
Come with me, take my hand and we'll run. And you and me are free to be you and me. So it's very much promoting like individuality and like kind of
Self-discovery.
yeah, I think it's particularly relevant in this episode because this is the first time that like Dean is away from his family. And he talks about this in the end, where it's like he's been so shackled by his family that like he hasn't been able to be happy. I think this is him like trying to figure out who he is outside of this role of like brother, mother, father that John forced on him, that like Sam sees him as, and then just like the hyper masculine soldier that John tried to mold him into, which is why I think he's making these like very explicitly queer references to Cass, because he's like kind of trying to like be himself and like recognize that the queerness is part of that. So he's like kind of trying to bring it to the forefront while also doing it in like kind of a joking or semi-aggressive manner. And it's interesting he's doing it with Cass.
And he knows Cass doesn't get every human reference. Like, so Cass is kind of a safe way to explore that because Cass doesn't get innuendo and Cass doesn't get pop culture references. So Dean can explore how that feels for him to like say things like, well, we're going to hold hands and sail off into the sunset together. Like he can say things like that.
Well, because Sam tends to be a little judgy of his references. And so it's nice to make references to somebody who is just going to continue to stare at him in the same manner that he's always staring at him. You know?
Yeah, I don't think like Dean would have made those references in front of Sam either.
They're so obviously queer as well.
So very, it's very like he is finally free to be himself, and he's trying to figure out what that means. And like I just kind of like started thinking about like, because this is like a really popular project that like kind of defined a generation of kids, and like he would have like kind of grown up with this, or it would have been like something he had access to.
Came out in 72.
Yeah, and it was like still like very popular like in the 80s and stuff. Like people like teachers would use it in school, or like, so I imagine like, I don't know, him like being in like the lower grades and like a teacher playing this, or them watching the TV special in class, or like, I don't know, finding the album at a library or something. And I just imagine like little Dean listening to this, and like especially there's this there's a song titled "It's All Right for Boys to Cry" that's sung by like a famous football player at the time. And then there's a song called "William Has a Doll," which like in one of the articles I read about this, Thomas was like, I've had a lot of like gay men stop me on the street and being like, you saved my life. Like I listened to William Has a Doll when I was a kid, and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna be all right.
Wow.
So I just kind of imagine like Dean listening to this and like the messaging being kind of completely opposite to what John was trying to instill in him, and like wanting it to be like his life to be in this land where he's free to be himself and he gets to grow into his own man, but like never having access until this moment in his life.
It's been dormant, those things.
And he revisits it and he kind of like, I don't know.
That's really
touching
cool.
In a very, very good way. Damn. I so badly want to know who approved this like title, you know, like who came up with that.
So here's the thing. This episode is written by Jeremy Carver, and I'm sure August knows how I feel about Jeremy Carver.
Yes, but do tell for the rest of us, the rest of people listening.
So Jeremy Carver ran the show from like season 8 to 12.
Well, I think it's 8 to 12.
Yes. Yeah.
I've heard great things about season 9.
It might be 8 to 11. 8 to 11 or 8 to 12.
It's around there.
Who have you heard great things about season 9 from, Noah?
No.
I hate season 9. I
hate season 9. I hate it so much.
I'm so glad.
But like
also,
season 9. The season 9 finale is one of my favorite episodes of the show, though. It's very complicated.
We'll talk about this at another point. When we're
I'm not going to get into it, but like I hate
Jeremy
season
Carver.
9. Yeah, Jeremy Carver wrote the episode, and he is, first of all, he's the only one who understands how to use like properly objectify Misha Collins. Like, because up until this point in Misha's career, like he was like hot guy, you know. He was the guy you casted when you want your character, your female character, to have like a one night stand or something.
Really?
Yeah. Look at his early roles. You look at his early roles, and it's like, oh yeah. as entirely his typecast. Supernatural was a strange one for him.
Okay.
Yeah, and like there's an interview I think with him and Jeremy Carver around the time season 5 air, like from season 5 I think, where he like, if I am remembering correctly, I could be remembering this wrong, like he literally calls Misha like a hottie with a body.
Yeah, I've seen that clip.
And
It's a
like
way to
the
talk
only
about you.
times we see Cass shirtless are either in episodes Jeremy Carver wrote or when he was the showrunner. And so I love Jeremy Carver because he gets Cass and like he uses him well. And so the fact that like Jeremy Carver wrote this episode with very explicitly queer references directed toward like from Dean directed towards Cass. And like you have these implications of like, well, it didn't work out at the brothel, but Dean said that Cass isn't gonna die a virgin. So
No
Not
matter
on his
what.
watch.
Cut scene.
cut scene and they're performing the ritual. So it's like, what happened in between there?
You've got time. There's time in there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's time in there. And then you have the episode title be a reference to this very popular and like progressive and like prolific children's entertainment project that was literally created by an actress and social activist who was like looking at the books that like her 5-year-old niece were reading at the time and was like, I want this child to have something that like isn't going to take her like 30 years to unlearn like the gender roles and stereotypes being promoted in these books. So I'm gonna make something to do that for her 5-year-old niece. And the fact that it's like a reference to this where it's like, it's okay for boys to cry and men can be their own men and women can be their own women, and you don't have to fit in these roles. You can be who you want to be. And the fact that there is a song on it that is so meaningful to queer men specifically, especially in an era where it's like in the 80s and 90s, like during like
That's
you
right at
know
the height of the AIDS crisis.
yeah, exactly. So it's just kind of like I'm really glad I decided to look into the title.
Me too. This is like such a this adds so much richness to this episode, and even to like the Bert and Ernie comment, like this adds this richness to it because it's not the only children's media reference. And again, to provide some extra context for maybe those who aren't as familiar with Bert and Ernie, these two characters are characters that live together, that do things,
Are
do most of
only
their
shown
lives together.
Like
Yeah,
they're
Share a
kind of solo.
bedroom.
Yeah, they
They're
share a
like
bedroom.
the Toad and Frog of Sesame Street.
Yeah, they are. That is
Oh.
like a perfect parallel. And like Frog and Toad are
They're gay.
are canonically
They're like actually
they're, like,
gay. Like-
actually like it's explicitly the creator has talked about them being gay. And
'Cause
Bert
it
and
was
Ernie
like
have
him-
the same vibes. Like
Yeah.
Bert and Ernie are this like have this old married couple energy and this old married couple care for each other. Like I think as a child, like watching Bert and Ernie without any of this context, like without knowing that, like watching Sesame Street, like that relationship was always one that was really important to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as I look back and I go, oh, okay, it was normalizing and giving like a visual and a representation to this kind of queer relationship
Yeah.
in a children's, in like a very like this is like they're puppets and it's children's media. So it's not like this hypersexualized sort of kind of relationship. Like that's never what Bert and Ernie were meant to portray. They were meant to portray this like, but they have always portrayed this like deep intimacy that is very queer.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting. I'm in the last couple of episodes that we've recorded, like I'm fascinated to discover like how many references Supernatural holds to pieces of children's media. Like, because apparently Monster at the end of this book
Also
was
Sesame
It's
Street.
reference
also
to
a Sesame Street
book.
reference. We just
Love
had
it.
that.
I didn't know that.
Know. There's just something that's I think really wholesome and like fascinating about like these kinds of references and how they're impacting like this show that is very not a children's show at all, but like it's drawing from these very simple kinds of like universal stories that we try to tell to children.
It's not just that, but they're taking all these queer references to children's media and whatnot that are very self-identification, grow as you should and however you want to. They're taking that and they're also taking Christianity and all of that and flipping it on its head and saying, oh, well, you think the angels are good, huh? No, like it's very interesting.
They're doing a lot of subversion.
Yeah, like this show is so layered.
Yeah.
I also do like that the references they make to the children's media are children's media that would be readily accessible to children living in poverty.
Mhm.
Yes.
and that
Yeah.
they could see anywhere they are in the country.
Yeah, they're ones that Sam and Dean would have had access to as children.
It's a good touch.
Probably some of the only stuff they would have had access
Yeah.
to is
Yeah, bringing it back to the episode a little bit. The line that Raphael has. Okay, well, sorry. First of all, Teenage Mutant Ninja Angel is such a great line. Love that.
right.
So what, you got wasted?
Yeah, wasted by a teenage mutant
Teenage
ninja.
Mutant Ninja Angel.
God, it's so good. But when they've got him captured at the end and he tells them that God is dead. Okay, interesting, fascinating. But then his reasoning for that is reasoning that I've heard people in the street use for reasons that they don't think that God is real, you know? Have you seen the 20th century? Have you seen the 21st? Do you think God would just let that stuff happen? Very interesting.
I also forgot until I did this rewatch, like how genuinely sympathetic of a character Raphael was. Like he was still an asshole, but like to continue the narrative of children's media, like he puts the angels in the position of being like scared kids that don't know what to do after they've been abandoned by their father.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so good in this episode. The actor is amazing. They
Yes.
kind of ruin him later on, but like I thought it was so like okay, like it gives understanding as to why the angels are doing this in the first place, because like they're tired and they're scared and they don't know what to do, and their dad is
Like they
gone.
run on orders and they have no orders anymore.
Yeah.
And they simultaneously have this sort of like, God is dead, it doesn't matter what we do, but also this like, careful, that's my father you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, Dean, you don't get to say anything about my father. I think, which is also such a like fascinating parallel to the way we've seen Dean talk about John, where he's like, I can question his orders, I can question the way he raised me, but if anyone else speaks against him, I will defend him, because that's the kind of fucked up dynamic that we have. And I think it's really interesting to see that kind of mirrored in the angels, like Raphael.
Yeah. Also talking about God as an absent father. Speaking of absent fathers, so like I don't know. Okay, so like, are we aware of like I don't even know if we can call it a fan theory, because I think this came directly from Jensen Ackles' mouth, that like Dean used to be like a survival sex worker, basically. Yeah.
And he had to do that as a young man.
So like my idea is like, honestly, especially after watching it again, like thinking about this, like I honestly think like the time he participated in survival sex work the most was during like the pre-series like Stanford era, because he specifically mentions like that line. I know he's saying it jokingly, but like in the brothel where he's like, this entire industry runs on absent fathers.
Yeah, that's personal experience. That's not just
that's
speaking about
experience.
That's not him speaking particularly about the women in this situation. That's personal.
Yeah.
And then like him having a conversation like later on with Cas being, I know a thing or two about missing / absent fathers. It's
like in the same episode, really Jeremy.
And I think it's so interesting. He gives him this sympathy for Cass's continual search, because he says, all logic. He says, I know something about absent fathers. All logic, like there were times with my dad where all logic said he was dead. I'm on my own. I'm surviving on my own. But I know in my heart that I knew in my heart that he was alive. And so that holding out, like Dean spent so much time, I think, of that Stanford era holding out hope.
Yeah.
That John is alive, that John hasn't abandoned him, that John will return. But it's also this like very futile hope because of the like situation John has left him in. And so he has this empathy for Cas, who is like, no, I'm convinced God is alive and I'm not going to give up on him, even if he is an absent father.
And the way he encourages Cas in that moment always just like hits me right in the feelings.
Yeah.
He encourages Cas to go and find him, even if it's just based on Cass's belief. Cas says, I believe he's out there. Dean says, good, then go find him. And that's not a guarantee that when you find God, that'll be a good thing, which I think is like what we saw with John, is like when you find your absent father, it actually just reveals that he's a shitty absent father.
Yeah.
But at least you found him. At least you have the answer. You have the truth then.
Not a Winchester's reference.
The way that Cas is just gone when Dean turns back hurt. That shit hurt.
Oh, I actually...
Right after Dean's like, oh, now that I'm alone, hell, I'm happy. Turns around, Cas is gone.
The way, I think I have a note. Cas pulling an Irish goodbye. We have to stand. I wrote that.
Not even an Irish goodbye. It's like in the middle of conversation. It's like,
dips, and he does that all the time. Oh God,
He has not figured out the social cue of like, you need to say goodbye because otherwise people think you're kind of a dick.
Or at
And he just
least
hasn't
let
figured it
them
out. He's
finish
like,
their sentence.
he's like, the
I'm like,
conversation, the important part of the conversation is done. Dean's just sort of like talking. I guess I can dip out now.
He's zoned out.
This was something I had noticed in this watch in particular, because I always watch stuff with the subtitles on.
Always, constantly.
And so it like I always love pointing out when the editors do the Lord's work. And I feel there was a moment of that at the beginning of this episode in the montage that's set to Simple Man by Leonard Skinner, which first of all,
Montage, love it.
So there's the line where it says, go find a woman and you'll find love. And then it cuts to Dean like washing the car. And then the line is, there's someone up above, and it pans across the empty front seat of the car to Dean's face. And I needed to point out specifically that like there's someone up above, and it cuts to the very seat that Cas is going to be sitting in it later in the episode and then disappears from. I just had a feeling.
Yeah.
We have not talked like at all about the Sam of this episode. Obviously,
the Sam. I love that.
I thought his storyline was super interesting.
So let's talk about it. Noah, you can give some of your thoughts on it specifically.
So him going off on his own and starting a job at a bar, whatever. Yeah, that's cool. He's trying to lay low. No big deal.
It's the least suited job for Sam Winchester.
Yeah, he's gotta be helping someone.
Wow, do you want yourself to be miserable?
Yeah, he does. He says that later on when he's talking about, you think it's gonna make you hate me less, hate myself less? Nah.
He's trying to do penance.
Having hunters blow his cover and then talk to him about that, and then coming back after getting told by demons that he started the apocalypse.
Oh, fucking hate those hunters.
Like if he wanted to lay low, he should have gotten a job at like a smoothie bar or something.
Somewhere hunters are never gonna go. Yeah.
Yeah, like a dive bar. Like, come on.
Like
that's step one when you go to a new town. You check out the dive bars. Okay, get the information.
But then you don't like work at them if you are a hunter.
Yeah.
You're an ex-hunter.
You're trying to avoid hunters. It's a terrible move.
Also, I would like to give maybe a Jamie style PSA about Lindsay in this episode, who makes a lot of very questionable decisions.
I thought she was very annoying.
Yeah.
I rewatched this episode not very long ago to talk about it with Jamie and Beth, and then rewatched it again last night to talk about it for this show. And Lindsay, I'm like, literally, like all my notes are like, Lindsay, like stop asking him about his mysterious and obviously dark backstory. Lindsay, stop pushing his boundaries when he's clearly made it clear he doesn't want to talk. Lindsay, why are you so infatuated with this obviously like sketchy ass man? Like, please make better
who
decisions.
You've known for at most 5 days. You
You do not need to be. You are way too invested in this person who you don't really know and who is obviously messed up in some like
because like with Supernatural, I feel like there's so many instances of like the fandom like hating on like women characters for no good reason and just being like, oh well, like they just making shit up. But this one, I'm like, no, she's just not a well-written character. Don't enjoy her.
She's one of those characters that like doesn't feel like a real character in the way that like
she doesn't feel like a real person.
No real woman is like making these super not very smart decisions,
especially if she's sober. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like
yeah and also like if you think he's in the mafia, you are like not going to be like, okay, tell me more. I want to get more caught up in this situation.
I really thought she was going to be revealed at the end as the Lucifer reveal that happened with Sam. I thought that was going to be Lindsay instead.
See, that would have been fascinating if they had done that.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
She was someone in disguise, or
it wouldn't fit Lucifer's MO of appearing as like
as dead lovers, missing lovers.
If you know, you know.
Choices made.
I will say, like, it's Sam's very, like, the very, like, boy king Sam energy is really strong at the end of this episode. I do always like when we get a good, like, Sam moment. In that vein, I think it's always really interesting when they explore that part of his character. That's that struggle between, am I a good person? Am I a bad person? What am I destined to? That whole thing that has that conversation at the end about, can people change? Is there a reason for hope?
Her saying that, I felt like such an asshole, because it's like no one's ever done anything so bad. And I like out loud to my computer, I was like, what about Hitler though?
Yeah,
like,
I also had that
definitely
thought.
I was like, what are you talking about?
I was like, you can change, but like you don't necessarily get forgiven for everything. That's not how that.
Like People have done some pretty bad things, as Raphael mentioned. Like,
I really liked, in Sam having that hope for people being able to change. They straight up poured demon blood down his throat or in his mouth,
Yeah.
and he spat it back
It's
out
really-
and resisted.
Really hard scene to. It's a really hard
It
scene to
was
watch. I find
rough. It was really rough.
yeah.
when you think about the addiction metaphors that have been
Yeah,
really strong with this,
especially with
storyline
Lindsay
for
bringing
Sam.
that all back up and back to the present, and him fighting that back and taking down the hunters without using any powers of any sort is very impressive. Is definitely a sign
Yeah.
of him growing and changing.
I did like at the beginning of the episode when he's first talking to Jess, kind of talking about how like he's trying to be like normal, and she's like, you know how that ends, and he's like, well, this is different. Like this time I know I'm a freak, and I'm like, oh,
It hurts.
that
Yeah.
hurt actually.
The contrast of that with his like Stanford era where he's like no, I'm going to be normal, like I'm just going to shove all of it down, whereas this time he's not trying to, even with like Lindsay, he's not trying to say, oh no, I don't have a dark past. He's just saying like I
Very clearly don't want to fucking talk about it. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
She's
Like he's
like-
like, I know I'm a freak. I know I'm a bad guy. I know all these things I've done, and I know they're not just going to like get erased. So I'm just gonna try and like do penance for them.
also like her being like, you finished that crossword puzzle. That means you're obviously highly educated. It's like,
I also had that note. I was like,
shut up. Like,
that's not
Yeah.
how
People,
education
like,
works.
not
Or
educated
intelligence.
people, like formally educated people could still do a fucking crossword puzzle. I know it's
And
like
that's-
hard, but like that doesn't
Also,
doesn't
it's not-
necessarily like connect. Like,
It's
No,
not. It's
it's-
not always about education. It's just about context and like where you were at.
Like, oh, I saw that you guessed the Wordle in 2 guesses. You must be a genius. Like,
yeah,
no,
you
shut
must
up.
have gone to Harvard. Like,
Also, it's like you just like way to stereotype and be like, oh, you work at a bar and you do the crossword. Like that means there's something strange about you. I'm like,
very mysterioso.
I'm like, okay.
Mysterio. Also, who
calm it
the fuck
down
says
a little.
Mysterioso? Just no.
Probably fans of wrestling.
Oh, damn it. Wow. Thanks for that, Noah.
I got
But
you.
also, I think this is important to like talk about, and I want to hear Noah's thoughts on it particularly because this is like one of the first longer conversations we get with Lucifer, and like Lucifer talking to Sam at the end, where he is, he says like, my heart breaks for you, the weight on your shoulders, like what you've done, what you still have to do. If there was another way, but there isn't. I will never lie to you. I will never trick you. It has to be you, Sam. It always had to be you. And I want to hear about how Noah feels about now that we have like gotten some content from Lucifer. What do you think?
I think it's going to be very, very formative for Sam to be able to put a reason behind everything bad that's ever happened to him. Before it was him being destined to start the apocalypse, but that's just making him feel even worse. But if it was because Lucifer wanted him as his vessel, and that's been negatively affecting things throughout the course of history, and hey, that could help him reconcile that a bit. But I don't know.
Yeah, if it's like a bloodline thing versus like anything he's done specifically.
Yeah, he's still been fighting to go against that, but it's in his
But also like,
genetics. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's genetics.
It's a weird argument too, because it's not making an excuse for anything that he did, but
it's saying there's been forces, since for Sam's entire life, since he was 6 months old, there's been forces that have been manipulating him
well, but this
for
would
their
even
own
be
purposes.
before the 6 months, before the demon
Yeah,
blood
to be like,
was
he always was.
like it always
Yeah,
had
'cause
to be.
the whole thing with Mary.
Yeah, Mary, Jess, every.
Like poor Sammy was kind of doomed before he started.
Yeah.
This seems like a good place to move into our going meta section. This is where we're talking lore, talking about representation, behind the scenes trivia, and anything else that we think is important. First off, we have our representation check.
Rep check.
We talked a bunch about the queer stuff in this episode. We've talked about the portrayal of Lindsay. I don't know if there's anything else particularly representation-wise.
Disappointing portrayal of everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a lot of relationship dynamics about fathers and whatnot. I really liked seeing Cas nervous as hell and out of his element. That was so fascinating.
He's so cute.
Yeah.
He's scared.
Little
Well played,
baby.
Misha Collins, for your he should get an Emmy for his performance of Gay Panic.
So
Yeah.
good. It was so good. It was being pushed up to a situation where you got to do something with a woman, but you have no interest in that. And it's like, okay, loved it.
And you're like being pressured by the guy you actually kind of want
Uh-huh.
to do these things
And
with,
you
but
wanna
you don't
impress him.
understand that. Like you're like you have these like feelings that you don't like understand, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what is happening goes against what your desires are, but you don't like.
And the guy himself was like making all of these comments at you and then took you here.
Yeah.
He's like, don't make me push you. And Cas is like, please do.
You're not going to die a virgin.
Yeah, and then he's like, let's go. And it's like,
you're like, what's happening? What's happening?
That was very interesting to see. I like exploring that side of Cas.
I also thought it was really cute that he like chugged the beer because like he knows damn well that's not going to do anything to him. He's just imitating human behavior he's seen Dean do. Like,
yeah,
cute. So get this. I was looking into the lore. The biggest thing I think we have, is obviously vessels, and the fact that we now know that both Sam and Dean are vessels for archangels.
Diametrically opposed.
and we have the establishment of a pattern of like Lucifer appearing to people as their, deceased love interests. So just something interesting to note.
No biggie.
yeah.
And like you said, Noah, like they're diametrically opposed. The vessel, like the archangels,
They're on a collision
opposite
course.
sides of this war.
It's not good. It's not pleasant, not fun. We had a lot of conversations with Raphael about how the angels think God is dead.
Will be interesting to see how that plays out.
That was such a long pause for such a subtle, vague response. Okay.
What am I supposed to say, Noah?
No, you're doing great.
It's fine. We're all fine here. How are you?
Everything's cool,
But I would also say that Raphael's conversation implies that nobody has seen God for at least 100+ years, since the 20th century minimum.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep, that is interesting. And we will.
I would like to know more about the hunters' fights whenever they went off in between seeing Sam and how one of them died and whatnot and how they got that violet demon blood. But I want to know. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see that bit.
Yeah.
But also something I thought a lot about while watching this episode is like, I feel like both Supernatural, the show, and then also the world it takes place in, like moved on way too quickly from the apocalypse. Like the next season, it's like nothing happened.
Really?
But like you're in it, you're watching it, and it's like people are like tearing each other to shreds. There are entire towns that are like killing each other.
Yeah.
Like
This is big news stuff. This is stuff that would like dramatically change the country.
the foundations of like civilization, and it's just nothing. Like
we had a global pandemic and people walk around like nothing
Listen,
happened. So
you fucking soon.
like I understand that, but also there are like structural changes that have resulted from that. Like, and those losses are felt or changes are felt, but like there is nothing. At least like with this, like people are acknowledging it's like we're acting like this never happened, but it did. In that world, it's like
like,
You're like, wait,
what
what?
apocalypse?
There
Like
was an
what?
Oh, weird. Damn.
It's very interesting because it's like on the news, and like
Yeah.
the bartender's like,
Well,
is it
'cause-
just me, or is it like the world is ending? Which
He should
like
say
suggests
that.
that like more of these stories have been on the news like leading up to this.
Mhm.
So it's like, what the
You
fuck?
can see
Like-
so much of it. Damn. Raphael being able to black out the entire eastern seaboard.
Nothing.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
nobody mentions that.
I feel like that would definitely have been a big story.
Yeah.
Been news.
Yeah, you know how half the country just like blacked out for a second? That's
His
weird.
wings were so cool though.
Yeah.
I always forget.
Okay.
I love him.
Dope
I wanted
as
to say that, like
fuck.
the effect, the lightning wings effect, is like one of the coolest I think in the entire history of the show. Like I think it's one of the
Yeah.
coolest visuals.
It looked so cool. It took me a second to realize that he wasn't like just drawing in electricity, but it was actual wings and it was
It was really
gorgeous.
cool. And it was an interesting way to like differentiate like the archangels from like seraphs.
Mm.
Like they
Mhm.
have different wings.
Yeah, you get a sense of like the power and the difference. I also really like, in terms of like visual effect, I really like the way they do the ring of fire that can trap
Yeah.
angels. Like I think the holy oil and fire, I think that effect visually, like this is one of the first times we've seen it, and it looks so cool, and
Yeah.
it's just so like visually.
It's a great setting for any sort of dramatic conversation. Dark area, fire in the bottom. Like
Oh,
So that it is now time for our last and often our favorite part of the episode, which is our character blessings. Noah, do you want to start us off? Who do you want to bless this week?
I'm gonna bless my boy Bobby because he has a very limited run in this episode, but it's powerful, and he makes sure that Sam is taken care of either way. He's trying to reach out and protect him, even though he can't do much himself. So blessings to Bobby.
Good. Pluto, do you have someone in mind?
Cas.
Yes, good.
It's always going to be Cas. My baby boy is going through it.
He really is.
He really is. I think he's handling it very well, though.
Yeah. Agreed. Elayna.
So I also wanted to bless Cass, but since
You also
since Cass
can.
has been blessed, I'm gonna bless Chastity, because I think she's really going through it after realizing that it's not her fault that Gene hated his job at the post office, and I think that she's probably gonna need some therapy after that interaction. So blessings to Chastity. I hope she's doing well, and I hope that she finds out that she's a lesbian, but it's fine.
That was such an insane moment, and I like the implications that like angels can just know things about your past.
Yeah.
Even things that like you don't know just by looking at you.
Yeah. Like, where does Cass get this information? Does he go looking for it?
Yeah. Does he quickly blip out for a second? Like, what's like, how does he know this?
Yeah. That is a kind of insane lore related thing, actually.
Yeah, I really just remembered. That's another lore thing I wanted to mention, is the fact that Dean says he didn't poop for a week. It's fucking hilarious.
That was rough.
Yeah.
Poor buddy.
A week.
Yeah. I can understand the desire to not get zapped places after that.
Yeah. And it also kind of makes you wonder, like, what kind of like
science goes behind
what
it.
is it like? Like, how do angels travel that it affects the human body that much? And like, I don't know, because I think because they're just like wavelengths, they probably like dematerialize.
Like, I imagine it's something like in Willy Wonka, when they they get zapped into little particles and then float above the thing and then rematerialize.
How does it work in Star Trek? Because I feel like it's something like beam me up.
Yeah, it's like basically dematerializing and rematerializing.
Yeah, that's gotta be rough on the human body.
Yeah. It's not tend to feel good.
No.
Yeah.
August, what about you? Who do you want to bless?
I want to bless D, cause my boy, for trying really hard to get across that he wants to have sex with Cass without actually using his words.
He did try so hard, and I think he succeeded twice. So.
I think he does as well. So kudos to him for trying all of his funny little pop culture innuendos and ultimately, getting some.
Yeah,
he does it. He does it in this episode.
Very proud of him for that. I guess also like blessings to Cass for getting laid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am so on board with your theory of them doing it twice in this episode. Had never considered that, but I'm on board.
That good old fanfic gap. It's coming in clutch for us.
It really is. So many things about this episode that make me insane, and that is one of them. Because it's like just the implications of like, you're not going to die a virgin, but then it doesn't work with the sex worker. So it's like,
yeah.
What options does that leave you?
Season 5. We are in season 5. Cass has been around for 1 season.
Like
we were just talking about that on the last episode, because August, you were like, you didn't realize just how explicit.
It's just so dead. There's just so
was that early on.
So like, I actually have like a theory about that, because like I've been thinking about this for the podcast. It's just been like brought to it, like something turning, because like this was supposed to be the last season. So I feel like they just went like balls to the walls with the homoeroticism, because they never thought they were going to have to deal with it.
Right. No consequences.
Last season on Earth and all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
they got renewed. And they were like, season 6, like, okay, we got to do something with this. And then they make some very interesting choices in season 6.
And it'll be very interesting to see some of those choices when we get there. For many reasons. Yeah.
Many reasons. So many interesting things.
Noah, brace yourself for season 6. That's all I'll say.
For now, that is all we have for today. Thank you so much to all of my co-hosts, and especially Pluto. Thank you so much for coming on today.
It's a blast to have you.
Thank you for having me.
This was wonderful. I'm very excited for everyone to hear this episode.
It was a great time.
I'm excited for it to come out.
You brought brilliant discourse.
Thank you. I'm glad that like you I decided to like just like say fuck it and tweet out like, hey, a lot of people who have supernatural podcasts follow me. I want to be on that.
I'm so glad you did. That's my favorite way to have, because it was funny because when you saw it, I was like, great, I've been looking for an opening, because I will also see people who are like big in supernatural TikTok or Twitter, and I'll be like, oh, I would love to have this person on. Let me think about, can I message them? Is it weird if I message them? So I love when they give me opportunities. It's great.
I was like so happy happy when you and Beth responded. I was like,
Live your dream. You have to live out your
Listen,
dream.
if I had held on to that fear of it, is it weird if I asked to be on their podcast? We'd have had a very different year this past year.
yeah.
Very true. Very true. Well, Pluto, do you want to tell the listeners where they can find you on the internet?
Yes, my TikTok is Spidey Highlighty. I am variably active on there. If you want to see me be very regularly unhinged, follow me on Twitter, which is at E65 Gwen Stacy, which does not allow for a lot of coherency across platforms, but I'm also never changing that at.
They're both fantastic handles, so
I need
you
people
should
to
keep
know
both.
that I'm obsessed with Gwen Stacy, Spider Gwen. I wrote my undergraduate thesis about her, so that's staying. But yeah, E65 Gwen
Amazing.
Stacy, or you can just type in queerbait-scholar, or if you literally just type in queerbait into the search bar, because my name is queerbait-scholar, my tweets show up regardless of what they're about.
It's amazing.
I learned that a couple months ago, and I was like, oh,
very funny, actually. We will link to both of
What
those.
a legacy.
honestly. Also, my Tumblr is Spidey Highlighty too. I never use it, but it's there.
There we go. There we go. Yeah. Well, thank you again, and we will be excited to have you back in season 6.
Oh yeah.
I'm very excited. So
So-
excited.
If you aren't already, you can make sure you are subscribed to Saving People Queering Things wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you so desire to share our show with your friends, that would be amazing.
You can find links to all of our social media and join our Discord server through our website, queeringthingspodcast.com.
And if you are all caught up on Supernatural and want to go back to before the beginning, you can listen to August, occasionally myself, and our friends Beth and KJ over on Wayward Parents, where updates are at Wayward Parents on Twitter and on Tumblr at Wayward Parents Pod.
Be sure to ride along with us next week as we explore Season 5, Episode 4, The End, with our good friend Valerie.
So excited.
I'm very excited.
Very, very excited about it. Thank you all so much for coming along for the ride, and we wish you a peaceful road until we meet again.